And so what I want to talk about is there's just so many different ways to go. And many times, and those of you who know me, I've learned that my job is to feed you folks what God puts on my heart, not necessarily what a holiday says to do. I never got the idea, and I know there's some denominations and things like that, I never got the idea of ministries that know what they're going to talk about 6 months prior. I don't know how that works. That doesn't make sense to me, in the same way that on the refrigerator was not the menu for every dinner for the next 365 days. What do you guys want tonight? Or no, we need to eat healthy and you fix it. Well, it's the same thing. And so many times, even on holidays, I won't necessarily follow the holiday. It's whatever the Lord wants, puts on my heart to feed. But today, we're going to talk about Father's Day. And the verse that came to my heart, instead of something else or continuing a series, and this is the verse that came to my heart as I was waiting on the Lord and how He wanted me to share today. And this verse is found in 1 Corinthians chapter 4. And let's see. Is that the computer thing that's doing that? Can you see? Make sure that this thing is on here. All right. I still have joy even when gremlin demons are attacking my remote control. All right. Well, we're just going to have to. I got it on, right?
Yeah, no, it's on. It worked all this morning.
It worked all this morning too? Who's on the computer? All right. All right, so this is the verse that came to my heart this morning, and this is what I want to talk about today. The Apostle Paul, when he was talking to the Corinthian church, he said this. He says, "For you may have countless instructors in Christ, but you don't have many fathers. For I became your father in Christ Jesus through the gospel." Watch what he says here. "Therefore, I urge you to imitate me. This is why I have sent Timothy to you. He is my dearly loved and faithful child in the Lord. He will remind you about my ways in Christ Jesus, just as I teach everywhere in every church." And what was on my heart was just to have a conversation and just share with y'all what I've done as a father now of coming up on 40 years. And it's certainly not an exhaustive list. I'm not like anybody else. There's things that I've tried. There's things I'm good at. There's things I'm not so good at. But right now we're batting really, really good. And we've had enough time with our children to watch now and see lasting fruit in their lives. And lasting fruit, I remember, and I've raised my children, one of the things that I'll start encouraging, first of all, for you parents and those who you're going to be, is I would say to my children, I didn't bring you into life, into this world, to tell you what you're going to be. You're here to love God and find out what He wants you to be, and then be the best you can at that. In other words, your dad's done, there's a couple things that I do and I've been successful at, but your job is not to try to follow my faith like we follow Paul's, but it's important to follow Christ in what you've been designed to be. And I said, look, if for some reason you just like picking up trash and garbage, and I really wish that was the case when they were kids in their bedrooms. I do. I wish that was the case. But like if this is something that you want to be a garbage collector, you know what? Then own a garbage collecting business then, and be the best you can be and glorify God. Too many parents, and I've learned this, and my children can correct me at any time they want, but I was intentional not to impose on my children, you have to be like your dad. You're going to serve, if you're in my house, you're going to serve my God. But let's find out what you've been created to be. What did God put on the inside of you? And let me help you follow that path and that purpose for you. And again, if the Lord hasn't called you into ministry and to be a preacher, then we don't want you to be a preacher. We want you to be whatever God's called you to be. So what I want to do today is just some things that core values and convictions that raising my children, and after, like I said, coming up on 40 years, we've produced fruit. And we found some things, Robin and I, but specifically as a dad, found some things that worked and some that necessarily didn't, and I'll share some of those things. But this Father's Day, I want to just congratulate the dads, the future dads, and Here's some things that work, and you know me, I have no hesitation sharing my mistakes as well. So here's some core values and some convictions, and it's just about having a conversation. So happy Father's Day. Let's talk about, okay, very good. Romans chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. What then shall we say that Abraham, our father, has found according to the flesh? For if Abraham was justified by works, he has something to boast about, but not before God. For what does the Scripture say? Abraham, now remember, he's our father in the faith. Abraham believed God, and it was accounted to him for righteousness. And so the first thing I wanted to mention is years and years ago, and I've shared this with you, Robin and I were young. We had moved to Tulsa. Actually, no, it was before that when we were in Milford, New Hampshire, but specifically moving to Tulsa, that as I was in Bible college and we were learning some really, really great things, but there's some verses that have become, that God's spoken to my heart that I'm intentional about. They've become convictions, core values, part of my DNA. And one of them is the Apostle Paul said this when it was being prophesied that, look, you're going to run into a lot of trouble here very, very quickly. So, by the way, not all prophecy is going to make you feel great. But the Apostle Paul said, I know that this is going to happen. You're not telling me anything I don't know. I know this. But then what did he say? He says, none of these things are going to move me, nor do I count my life dear to me, that I may finish my race with joy in the ministry that he's given me. Our father in the faith, Abraham, was justified. He pleased God because he believed what God had said to him. And I had determined that once, and I can be very black and white about things, and I had determined in my heart that if I'm going to follow Christ, I'm all in. And if I'm all in, that means the Scriptures and what God has said is going to be the primary rule in my life, and that also means my family. And as a good father, my children were going to see a father that even if he made mistakes, I'm all in for God, and if his word said it, I'm going to believe it. If his word says it, I'm going to believe it. And I wanted my children, listen, you know, not everything is worked out in my life, but I know this. I have absolutely zero hesitation to challenge any one of my children and ask them, as far as you can tell, did your old man go after God with his whole heart? Did I? Okay. Number one, dads, demonstrate to your children that you're all in for God. One of the things, you know, and again, I've been at this a long time now, right? It's difficult to want to believe for your children to have an all-out conviction in God if what they see Monday through Saturday is you not having one. Like, it's an inconsistent message to say to your children, you got to go to church, you got to go believe God, you got to do this, you got to do that. And then during the week, they watch you fall apart. You don't know any scriptures, you're losing your mind, your emotions run you. All right, you're beyond schizophrenic. What's the word for gazillions of personalities? And yet you're going to tell them you have to come to church and serve God. No, as dads, let's be all in and determine, as our father Abraham, listen, his faith was counted as righteousness, and he was believing things that took decades to come to pass. The promise that made him famous, most famous, is, and by the way, as the model of what our Father in heaven was going to do, Abraham, you and Sarah, you're going to have a child. How many of you, when God said, you guys are going to have a child, okay, who laughed? Okay, most people say Sarah. No, they both did. No, Abraham laughed too. God, I suppose I can't say to God, you're out of your mind, but okay, you're out of my mind. But here's what happened. He began to turn. And there's going to be, as a dad, let's show our families. As a pastor, I've tried to demonstrate that to you, that, listen, no matter what it looks like on the outside, you should have a shepherd, a pastor that's all in for God. And I'm going to believe God, what he said, whether I see anything at first or not. I mean, why wouldn't you want to follow a pastor like that? And if I'm not that, find one. Pastor, why do you keep wanting to get rid of me? Because if you're one of my children, you wouldn't think about it anyway. And I've wanted to model to this family, let's go. That once in a while, now it didn't happen every day, but Peter demonstrated that there are times that we are called to walk on water. Now, it wasn't his idea, but when Jesus was walking on water and Peter's like, that looks pretty cool, can I do that? Yeah, come on, let's go. And as a spiritual father, as a natural father, I wanted to model in front of my family that they were going to have a dad who's not squirrely, but a dad who was ready to go, God said it, I believe it with my whole heart. And I've also raised my children as well, and this includes walking with God. As I've shared with them, and I raised my children up, and I said, everybody's going to have regrets. Do your best to keep them to a minimum. I don't want to take my last breath and thought, woulda, coulda, shoulda, especially in the things of God. And so Abraham became our model of faith, that God had said what he said, he believed what he said, and he didn't care what it looked like on the outside. See, we have some really great things. I have some really great things on the outside that 25, 30 years ago didn't look like this at all. And dads, model in front of your children. And listen, as long as you're breathing, there's still time. Like, you can start today. If you've been a weenie, stop being a weenie. Just stop it. And determine today that, and I wanted and as far as and with my walk with faith, and in faith, and the things that we've been able to accomplish, I have in me a desire for my kids to go, that's my dad. Christian's having that with his family now, and I'm very proud of him for it. You know, when he's talking about, and he's referring to Declan. Hey, Dad, and opening up his eyelids and stuff. I wanted my children, whatever it was, for them to at least stand back and go, you know what, that's my dad. You know, I want that as your pastor. Pastor's out flying jets. Yeah, how come he's not around? Versus, you go get him, Pastor Joe. Because you believed God 20 years ago when he told you to get into aviation. And I'm so happy you're flying to Frankfurt and you've got these guys that run global companies being around you. I'm not going to lament that. I'm going to go, that's my pastor, and I can learn something from him. That's what I want. If I don't have it, see ya. Why would you not want a strong pastor? Why would you want a pastor that you can walk in and push around? Versus, I want to follow that man. And you know, when you follow a godly leader, you are following God. The Apostle Paul told us to imitate him. And as I want my children, as a pastor, I really want you to celebrate what I do. Is there anybody in here that can think of a time when they came in and talked about the good things that were happening in their life and I resented it? Or was I not the first to say, that's awesome? I'm remembering a fellow right now. It's sad, he ended up leaving offended. But I remember this young man was part of our church for a long time. And he was finally able to, he overcame some things, and he was finally able to get a car, like his own car. And it was old and clearly used. And he pulls up into it, and it could have broken my heart, and I shut it down right away. He pulls up and he goes, Pastor, I know it's not as nice as your car. And I said, stop right now. I am so happy for you that you worked as hard as you did and believed God for this. Let's sit in your car. Show me this car. And I was so proud of him. And again, whatever happened, it doesn't matter, but create a culture in your family, dads, as I have in my natural family and my church. Let's celebrate our children. Let's celebrate. And why am I saying that? Because I know I have friends of mine that regret, because their children are adults, and we'll get to the verse in a little bit, to where there's a difference between raising a son or a daughter in discipline to grow up and be responsible versus that was great, but here's 5 things that are wrong. Dads, we're here to build up and speak to our children, but also to have our children look at us and go, I want to be like my dad. Man, I'm celebrating my dad. And I want to, and this is a culture. This is a culture that I want here in this church. And thank you very, very much. I don't want to sit there. Well, in fact, I don't want to. I'm never going to come into this church after if I just buy 5 jets or something like that. I'm not going to listen to you get mad at me because who does he think he has 5 jets? Well, let's go talk about the nations we're going to go serve with them. Pastor, go get them. Because I'm going to say, go get them to you. So in our house, so that leads me to the next thing. And remember, I said today is a conversation. Dads, let's create a culture of celebration. A culture that celebrates even the smallest victories, the smallest areas that our kids are overcome, and we do, and that leads me to the next one. You've heard me quote this through the years, and this is a big one. Ecclesiastes 2:24. So I decided, this is Solomon saying, that there is nothing better, say nothing better, than to enjoy food and drink and to find satisfaction in work. And then I realized that these pleasures are from the hand of God. Work is not slavery. It's supposed to be a pleasure. Shared with this the other day, and I'll talk about how I did this with the children and stuff like that. But in the last 3 months, I just went through a lot of stuff. As you know, I'm now flying contract work, but to do that, I had to elevate, and now I'm flying like airline level stuff and check rides. And so basically, for the last 2 months, I've been straight out. By the way, I just got back we have the first edit of the book, and they really like it, so I got to read through it and their corrections and stuff like that. So I was doing the book, I was doing all the ground school stuff, 50 hours of that, the flying, everything, basically totally out straight. And God's honest truth, I thanked the Lord for the hard work. I didn't bemoan the hard work. Our children should see dads that come home and have joy when they're dirty and stinky because they worked all day. And I don't see anywhere in the scriptures, by the way, that it says your work day is 9 to 5. Your work day in God is to accomplish whatever He's put on your heart. And if it takes 3 jobs to do it, go do them. I remember sharing with one time, and one of the things that we were talking to our children about, and there was a time we were real busy. We had the church here. We had the aviation company. I was also flying charter 135. So I had personally 3 different jobs, plus Robin was running the office here, plus she was running the flight school. So there was a long time in our house we had 5 jobs. 5. And there's a culture here right now that wants the government. You younger folks, nobody owes you anything. And my taxes don't owe you anything either. A man don't work, he don't eat. We can solve the homeless situation like right now. Go to work or you're being incarcerated. Done. Why should my beautiful city of Manchester be ruined and I can't walk my grandchildren down because you won't go to work? Just saying. So 5. But I sat down with and I remember sitting down with the family, and I was clearly gone a lot. And I've believed that, and my family's heard regularly, that the world has not changed working 9 to 5. If you carry this passion inside your heart that you're here to make a difference in your world, you are not going to do it 9 to 5. And so now there's schools where, okay, you always have to be at every basketball game, and you're going to have to be at every baseball game, and you have to be all of this and that. Everybody's got something to tell you what to do, except for if you follow the scriptures, you don't see a lot of that. Let me explain. So I remember talking to the kids. I said, look, I've been gone a lot, and I was. And and I ended up sharing with her, I said, look, I can put this stuff aside. Like if you're waving the white flag, and you're saying, Dad, you're not around enough, we can have a conversation, and I can change some things. And I said, but, you know that twin-engine airplane we just flew to Florida? You don't have that anymore. You know the benefits we have of being able to pay for all the stuff that you're able to do? Well, we don't have, and I'm okay. I said, but is it possible, can we consider that? Because folks will say, well, Dad, you need to be around to teach your children. Well, I was teaching my children a hard work ethic. And that if you're going to have something worth something, it's going to cost you dearly to work. That's what a dad would do, right? Well, clearly on the other side of it, it all worked out. And I just wanted to bring us back to this. Men, it is godly to come home, and that's the next thing. By the way, after you get done and you're sweaty and you stinky, and I said this in the family thing, wives, don't you dare tell your husband to take a shower before you give him a smooch. You just hug him nice and hard. That's my king. That's my husband. Kids, this is your dad. You see all the oil and the grease on him? You see how tired it is? His tie's hanging out to here. Do you see that? Come on, let's welcome Dad home because he's worked so hard. And men, it's godly to party and to celebrate your work. It was awesome for that young man to have worked and believed God to bring that car into our parking lot, and was like, man, that is awesome. And so I've learned this. Look, there's benefits. The scriptures tell us, Solomon said this, that there is benefit, there's profit in all labor. You're going to have to sit back sometimes and just have some fun and enjoy. Labor produces benefits, and enjoy food and drink and find satisfaction in your work. Now, whatever those things mean to you, I don't care, but take the time to celebrate. I know there's there's people right now, they're afraid to spend any dime because I got to save it for retirement. I'm not talking about being unwise, but save for retirement all you want unless you get into a car accident when you're 40 and you lost everything. 10%. What should we do with 10% of our money? What should we do with it? It's by the book, if you can do it. What should we do with another 10%? Save it. All right? And then on top of that, take 3%, 5%, and go have fun. Go have joy in your work. And that's one of the things we've always done. We've always had as much as we can. Now, a big toy for us would be Pizza Hut. Remember we'd go to Pizza Hut in Milford? That's all we could afford, but we went to Pizza Hut and take the kids, and that's what we had. But I enjoyed the fruit of my labor. Show your children it's okay to party. Show them it's okay to celebrate. Have joy in your family as a result of work. Okay, so that's another one. Let's keep going. The integrity of the upright shall guide them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them. The integrity of the upright guides them. One of the things that was so important to me is to live right. And if you said you were going to do something, do it. I'm thinking of one, as I was praying about the service, I thought of one instance. And notice here that the integrity guides you. In other words, understanding right and wrong and honesty, you don't need to hear a voice from God. If you know what's right and wrong, you just do it, and it becomes your compass. I don't need to hear lightning come out of the sky if I already know, don't steal. If I already know, don't cheat. And the integrity will begin to rule you, and it'll begin to guide you and govern you and even consume you at times. I'll give you one specific example. Way back when we started Harvest Aviation, there were 3 people that invested in our company. And they had invested money, and I forget, well, actually, I kind of remember the thousands that each put in. Okay, and the agreement was X, Y, and Z, you'd get a return on that. All right, well, owned the company for, 8 years, 9 years. We did really, 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 really great. We had a really bad window in the recession, like 2008, 2009. I suppose people just figured that Nancy Pelosi, even though she got to fly a 757 around the world, should stand before Congress and say business owners shouldn't own private jets. Well, that was problematic for someone that flew private jets and trained people to fly them. There was that season and during the recession. So things got very, very tight. We got behind on a lot of bills. Made a business deal with someone else. All this stuff was supposed to be taken care of. It wasn't. And so I had a good friend of mine that had invested in our company, and he didn't get his money back. And that bothered me for a long time. Now, I did not... Now, and it caused, there were many things that caused a rift, but that caused a rift because he felt that there was an injustice done. Now, let me ask you this. Does anybody invest in a stock and you're guaranteed you're going to make money on that stock? No, an investment involves risk. If someone, and listen, whoever or whatever you invest in, don't think for a second that the person investing in does not want to profit, because if you profit, they profited, right? No one wants to lose. But you invest and you know things could go wrong. Well, for whatever reason, whatever things that didn't get taken care of that cost me $30,000 in lawyer's fees to try to make right. It bothered me that one of my investors did not get them for a long time. Well, let's see. So in 2009, I sold it, and 2 years ago, it bothered me. It bothered me. And we got to a place now to where we are very comfortable. And I called that individual because integrity guides me. And I called that individual and I said, "Sir," I said, "I know we've had this. You invested in our company." Again, investment, there's no guarantee. But it didn't matter. My integrity, I was bothered because that individual, because see, he wasn't just investing in a company, he was investing in a person. He was in me. By the way, am I helping you get into my head on how I think about some things? And why I don't put up with bull in my church? Because this is how I think. Integrity is huge, and honor. And I'm a man of honor. And I called him and I said, "Sir, we know this happened, but I would like to," and there were multiple zeros in that. And I said, "I would like to make this right. Would that be okay with you?" And it was. And now we're friends again. Even though it took, so if we're in 24, so 22, and this ended in 2009, my integrity and my honor stayed with me for, 13 years to make that right. A good father, a good man, a good shepherd will be so concerned about his integrity, and here I use the word honor even more here. Dads, be honorable in front of your children. If you tell them you're going out to get a hot dog, go out and make sure you go get the hot dog. Cats in the cradle and the silver spoon does not belong to a man of God. If you don't know who I'm talking about, Harry Chapin. Cats in the cradle and the silver spoon. And at the end of the song, right, my boy had become just like me. He had gotten so busy doing his own thing. But that one is huge to me. Character, honor, integrity. And I have a ministry of character, honor, and integrity. And when that's not happening, we don't get along. Because one day we're going to stand before our King who promised from Genesis chapter 3, "I'm sending a Redeemer." And he did just what he said he was going to do. And that's huge. Dads, let your children see that you are a man of your word and honor, and that will guard you and guide you in the affairs of life. Let's keep going. How are we doing? Good? Okay. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, and this is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and the instruction of the Lord. Dads, a couple things here that I wanted to talk to you about. Your children, when we have children, and dads, listen, you will be friendly with your children, but you're the father first, not their bud. And we're getting some of that crossed up now in our culture today. Well, it started a long time ago with Cain and Abel. But there's this idea, and I'll just be honest with you, even to this day, and dads, this needs to be in your family. And children, I don't really care what you think about it. You're never equal with your parents. Ever. That is your dad. That is your mom. And there are some things that are taking place. Listen, I've learned, and we can talk about this here with our wives here in a second, but dads and fathers, we do things when we're in agreement. Dads and fathers do not do things because they've just resigned. That is your home. That is your family. And from day one, a godly man, now listen, you should earn this honor. But a godly father and a godly husband, this is our house, I'm dad, and this is the way it's going to be. And our children, it's important. My job and today, and if there's anything I get riled up about, you know it. Well, there's a couple things I get riled up about. But this last 20 years, could you imagine 30, 40 years ago, the school system saying they should be in charge of the children instead of the parents? And yet that's what's happening today. Now, okay, especially when it comes to the whole gender thing, now even legally wise, or at least policy-wise, the teachers do not have to report the affairs of the children to the parents. And in essence, and in taking the position of authority over the children. And I can tell you when it happened. What began to happen back when they said, we're not going to have prayer and then allegiance in the schools, but specifically, we're not going to even allow prayer. I'll tell you what was going on. In the 60s, when Marxism started coming in, atheism, Karl Marx said, he was very clear that he wanted to dethrone capitalism, he wanted to dethrone God. He hated the idea of God. He thought the idea of God was for rich people to manipulate poor people by using guilt against them. That's what he taught. That's what he believed. So when these ideas began to come in, and atheism began to rise, and Marxism and socialism began to rise, the reason for let's not have prayer in schools because the government did not want competition. That's how it started. The government did not want competition. So now the state comes in, and now because the state has built these things up, the state has come upon its logical conclusion, we're in charge. The kids are ours. You can see video after video and meme after meme and reel after reel of teachers that have been caught being filmed talking about the control they should have over the children versus the parents. Dads, you cannot allow that to take place in your family. You are the father. And the first commandment, your children are supposed to learn that they get a promise and a benefit from, because it'll go well with them and they'll live a long life, is honoring their father and their mother. Means, dads, there needs to be order in the house. I had grace until I didn't have grace. And you can ask my children. You know, we have sayings that, you know, we smile when we say, you know, like one of them is, I love you and I'm glad you're part of the family. Well, you know where that came from? All right, she wouldn't even mind me telling you. It was Lindsay. She just would not say it. I love my little goober. Oh, man, but she tried me on that one. And the fighting and then this and that. And I'm good friends with, however far I took it, it didn't matter. They wouldn't get along, they were fighting, everything like that. And they always knew this. And I meant this. I remember making, to Dave Wheeler, executive counselor, like, if you guys don't want to live in my house, get the heck out. That was another thing. When one of my sons, threatened to move out, get your butt out now. You are not manipulating your father. I didn't bring you into this world to manipulate me. Okay, you see this roof over your house? All right, I'm looking at you. Let's see, I don't see anybody here looking like they're in southern Africa and haven't eaten in 2 weeks. You look like you're doing pretty good to me. And you're going to honor me. My children never, and if there's ever a time when this is out there, is children manipulating the parents, did I allow that to happen? No. Did you turn out okay? Okay. Dads, there's never been a time when there are voices that are so hitting your children and your family to be rebellious. I'm going to read a verse to you. This is hot off the press. I mean, you can just leave that there. I'll just read it to you. And if there's ever a verse that means something, it should mean in this day and age. Always has. But it's in Hebrews chapter 1. And I pray about this regularly. Actually, Wednesday night I was just praying about this. In Hebrews chapter 1. And dads, this is an important verse. It's only 10 after 11. I'm rocking it today. But to the Son, he says, this is starting in verse 8, to Jesus, he says, your throne, O God, so Jesus, your throne is forever and ever. A scepter of righteousness is the scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness and you hated lawlessness. Therefore, God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of gladness more than your companions. You want to hang around with Jesus. He loves righteousness. He hates lawlessness. He doesn't like your kids yelling and screaming at you and kicking you in the shins, and God forbid you give in to them. He hates that. He hates when a law says, don't shove drugs in your body, that you go and shove drugs in your body. Did you know the scriptures say there's 7 things the Lord actually hates? And see, many of the things he hates our culture today, and why wouldn't it? If you're not following the voice of God, why wouldn't you have everything else except for what's God? And if there's ever a time, lawlessness is ruling in our times, in our culture. Lawlessness and chaos. Have you ever tried, listen, I would challenge anybody to sit at how many of y'all like jigsaw puzzles? Okay? You're doing your jigsaw puzzle, and yet you got a hurricane blowing through your house in chaos. How good are you going to be at putting that thing together? When you have chaos just running a nation and running a culture, all right, that's there to fight God and His order. And listen, laws are good. The reason why your rear end is still sitting in a chair right now is because of a law of gravity. If you didn't have that law holding there, we'd all be ping-ponging and banging our heads up in the ceilings. He hates lawlessness. And the scriptures say, bring up your children in the way they should go. And when they grow old, they'll not depart from it. It doesn't mean they're not going to have excursions. Little Johnny is not being cute when you concede to their lawlessness. Yes. Now, here's the other side of that coin. Watch this. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. What's he saying? There's going to be times your kids are going to get plenty angry at you. What he's saying is, and I cited it earlier, there are dads, and I know them, that no matter what happened, whatever the children did, they never could do it right. They were constantly punishing, constantly beating, constantly, versus, son, you're being kind of squirrely right now. Let's go for a walk and have a conversation. And let me talk to you about how important order is and chaos. And the book of Proverbs, and your kids should be reading that on a fairly regular basis, regularly warns, hey, you guys, don't go after people that are saying, hey, come with us. Let's go cause some trouble. Come with us. Let's go have some fun. And the scripture's saying, don't go near those guys. And so what we need to do is we need to be treated. See, that's what he's talking about. Is sitting down with them and saying to your kids, this is your dad telling you, letting you know there is right and wrong, and it's not relative. We have the scriptures because the creator of the universe loved us enough to say these are the laws. This is what I made. This is what I've created. And as long as we have chaos and as long as we have immorality that's going on, these voices are going to come after you. And listen, at first I want to have a conversation with you. But as long as you live in my house, if you decide to pay attention to these voices, I am under no obligation as your dad to give in to you. Whatsoever. I'm under no obligation. And that's important because here's the thing. Yeah, I've used this illustration before. There's an idea, and I get it. And most children, I believe in private education. I do. I love and am very proud of the co-op that we have here. It's great. But on saying that, I am not a firm believer that all children, and you may or may not disagree with that, if all of our good children are taken out of public schools, then who's there to be an example to kids that don't have any other example? Moses did just fine being educated in paganism. Daniel did just fine being educated in paganism. I'm saying this to say, I'm wondering if there isn't a time when our children can be so stout. Listen, we should ask ourselves, if our children are turned because of the voices of the world, is it possible that we miss some things in raising them up? Or, here's another way to look at it. I think the Amish have it right. All right, go sow your oats. Go on, you go see if the world's that good. And was it 2 weeks ago? Look, I was a dope-smoking, cocaine-sniffing, LSD-taking rock musician that just happened to want to go to the Air Force Academy. I don't know how that was going to work. And I thank God for, there's some things I wouldn't necessarily go with, and I talk about how there was disconnect, but you know what? The Roman Church put a fear of God on the inside of you. Catholic Church put a fear of God on the inside of you. And parents, dads, when you've poured everything you have into your kids, don't be afraid to let them go. That big, bad world, it's so mean, it's so terrible. I thought the sons of God are supposed to go into it and change it. How are we going to do it if we're so afraid that we're holding into our kids and we won't let them go? They'll be fine. If you put it into them, what you needed to put into them, I ended up turning out fine. And as you pray and as you believe God, I think I've shared this with you before. Yeah, we're almost done now. Get us out here early. It's Father's Day. It's important. I got a golf swing to work on. The prayers of a righteous man or woman, fervent, effectual prayers, okay, they get a lot done. I have thanked both my grandmothers before they went home. I remember coming home when I was in Michigan, and I was tripping out on LSD, heard my first Al Di Meola record. My gosh, Land of the Midnight Sun, 1 o'clock in the morning. I can still remember those first solos, higher than a kite. Anyway, found my way home, right? And I'm going upstairs, and I know Grandma is in there praying in other tongues for me. And my other grandma never left the Catholic Church, but she'd send me these little letters. Joey, I'm praying for you, Joey. Praying for you. Being the biggest donkey's rear end ever born at times. My grandmas, they prayed for me. And what went into me from the Baltimore Catechism and having a fear of God and having a respect for tradition, it all came alive. And today, and I can't wait to thank them again Grandma, thank you for praying for me. Don't worry about your children. They'll be fine. If you took care of them as a parent, I know if you went to this church, I get young adults mad at me all the time. I don't care. I gave you the information. And we were talking with Christian and Lacey yesterday because they're young family now and stuff. And I said, and that you just want to do it right and raise their kids and make sure everybody turns out all right. The prodigal son is in there for a reason. He came back. He came back. And so one more time, dads, have honor in your home. I'll be simple. Don't put up with any crap. But the other side of the coin is take them fishing. If you don't know how to fish, either learn or take. I don't know. The only thing I know how to do is pave driveways. Well, then throw their rear end in the truck. Okay? Buy them some oversized overalls. Okay? Let them have a little plastic shovel. All right? Let them get really, really dirty in the asphalt and say, come on, you're going to go hang out with Dad. Right? Because if you'll do that, then now Dad's not just being mean, Dad's just trying to raise me up and raise me right. And wives, last thing I'll say about this, just please make sure you're honoring your husbands. I have that in my home. And as dads, your children, what would be the term? How do I make that clean? Your children should not see a whipped dad. Okay? It's just the way it's worked here. Robin is my helpmate. She is not my boss. And for the most part, our children do not need to see Dad who does things because he just resigned. They're watching. They're watching the dynamics of mom and dad. I trust wives. I hope you're bragging on your king regularly. I'm so proud of my husband. I'm so proud of the work. Kids, do you know how hard your dad worked? Do you see when he comes home late at night? Do you know the macaroni and cheese you love having that we put bacon in? Half of which you spilled or threw at me because you got mad at me because you were a baby. Your dad earned that. You know what? Let's make sure when Dad comes home, we're just going to hold on to him. We're going to hug him. We're going to thank him. All right, go to your room and take a crayon and put a card together. Let's honor your dad. And children, you're not going to hear me talk about my husband and your dad in any other way but respect. I'm so glad. Man, he's such a great husband. Versus, especially as my kids get over, take him aside. Now, I know your dad's a jerk. I know your dad doesn't get it. It doesn't work that way. We honor. Your children need to see your husband honored. And husbands, and I want to be careful. For the most part, there's anomalies. There's anomalies. But for the most part, Robin and I are in agreement because we're working together, not because I resigned because she wouldn't shut up. Isn't there a verse in there about a contentious woman? Your children are watching how you act as husband and wife. Dads, it's important to have these things in your house. Okay? Here's some highlights. We're done. 25 after. Whoop. A good father will have a life worth imitating. We started out with Paul talking about, hey, imitate. This is how I do things. This is what I felt that I wanted to talk about. This is just what I do. You can do whatever you want. What's one of our favorite sayings here? I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to give you a lot to think about. Okay? A good father will have a life worth imitating. Dads, believe that you can create a culture in your house where your kids are looking up and going, that's my dad. I want a church where you just I come back That's my pastor. Go get him. A good father has strong faith in his God. Let your children see a dad who's all out for the king. All out for the king. By the way, Abraham made mistakes. He was a liar. But you know what also did? And he sorted things out. What do you mean it was a liar? You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. That beautiful woman. Yeah, it's my sister. Well, it's only a half-truth. But you know what I also like about Abraham? Not only was he a man of faith, testosterone's our friend. He was an incredible giver. Lot, you can have whatever you want. It's all yours. He said this because of his faith. He said, let no man say he made Abraham rich. He trusted in his God. And you know what he was also really good at? When they had to go to war, he had men of war. A brother was born for adversity. Will you guys go fight with me, or will you fight with me? Let's go fight and get something done, just like Abraham, right? A good father is a hard worker and celebrates his life and accomplishments. He works hard and parties hard. By the way, one of the things I want to add to that, you know, there were times I spent money that wasn't in the budget. Well, you know, we can't afford that. She's like, yeah. It's my favorite thing to do. You know, the last thing we should do is buy that SIG M11, but man, it just feels good to me right now. It's the best time to spend money when you don't have it. We've turned out all right because I learned that. This is huge. Celebrate your accomplishments. Work hard. A good father has strong principles to guide him. Let your children see. You're not going to be perfect at it, dads. You're not. And be quick to say you're sorry even as a parent. Did I not go to every one of my children? Okay, did I not go to any of my children? That was a couple years ago. Do I have anything I need to apologize for? I've gone to all my children and asked them that. Is there anything your dad growing up, you know, because I say some things when I'm up on the stage, right? Is there anything that I need to apologize to you for? None of them. No, Dad. Was I perfect? No, but I tried to live a life to where I didn't have to be ashamed in front of my children. I did some dumb, stupid things through the year. I mean, but I didn't have to apologize to them. Dads, you can live that kind of life where you can model even success in your failure. They're watching, right? A good father has, and integrity. Teach them integrity. I was bothered for how many years because that man trusted. I owed him nothing. I didn't owe him a cent for that investment. But my integrity said, I'm gonna make it right. Dads, let your children see a man that makes sure he makes things right. And then a good father runs his house with honor before both his wife and his children, and get over it or get out. They always had an open door, but you're not manipulating me. You want to run away? Bye. And I meant it. You think you're going to make me afraid of you? No, I got work to do. They all hung out, and they've all turned out just fine. Dad, be dad. Be the husband. Be strong. And model in front of your children. Amen?